The Horus Heresy sounds impossible because Warhammer fans often explain it like a cathedral fell on a history textbook. There are Primarchs, legions, chaos gods, old grudges, forbidden projects, betrayals inside betrayals, and roughly 1,000 names that all sound like they were carved into a fortress door. But the simple version is not that complicated. The Horus Heresy is the civil war where the Emperor's favorite son turned half of humanity's greatest armies against him, burned the dream of the Great Crusade, and left the Imperium trapped in the nightmare we know 10,000 years later. So this is the map without the migraine. Not every campaign, not every side character, and not every extremely angry demigod with father issues.
We are going to follow the chain. The Emperor builds an empire. Horus is given the keys. Chaos finds the crack. The Legion split, Terra burns, and nobody truly wins.
Start with the Great Crusade. Humanity has survived Old Night, a long age of isolation, mutation, superstition, and lost technology, and the Emperor rises on Terra with a plan to reunite human worlds under one rational empire. To do that, he creates the Primarchs, 20 superhuman sons designed to lead armies, inspire civilizations, and conquer at a scale ordinary generals could never manage.
The Primarchs are scattered across the galaxy before they can be raised by him, so the Emperor builds Space Marine legions from their genetic material, and later finds most of the sons one by one. For a while, it works frighteningly well. The Great Crusade expands across the stars, human worlds are brought into compliance, alien empires are crushed, and the Imperium tells itself that reason has replaced religion.
This official doctrine is called the Imperial Truth. It says there are no gods, no demons, and no supernatural powers worth worshipping, only dangerous phenomena that science and discipline will master. The problem is that in Warhammer, the supernatural is real. The warp is not just hyperspace. It is an ocean of emotion and thought, and inside it are powers that feed on rage, decay, desire, ambition, fear, and worship. The Emperor knows more about that danger than almost anyone, but he does not explain the full truth to his sons. His read seems to be that knowledge of chaos is itself a doorway, so he gives the Imperium denial instead of understanding. That secrecy is the first load-bearing crack in the story. When chaos finally reaches for the Primarchs, many of them have been trained to reject superstition, but not prepared to recognize a god wearing a mask. Horus Lupercal is not just another Primarch. He is charismatic, brilliant, beloved by many of his brothers, and trusted by the Emperor more than any other son. When the Emperor withdraws from the Crusade to work on a secret project beneath Terra, he names Horus as Warmaster. That means Horus becomes the supreme commander of the Great Crusade, the public face of the Emperor's war, and the brother who must now manage a family of demigods who were already difficult on a good day. This is where the heresy becomes emotionally simple. Horus is given impossible authority, but not complete trust. He is expected to carry the Emperor's dream while being kept outside the Emperor's deepest plans. He sees mortal bureaucrats gaining power, conquered worlds straining under Imperial rule, and his brothers nursing resentments that the Crusade has been moving too fast to heal. Chaos does not need to invent every wound. It only needs to press on wounds that already exist. Horus is injured on Davin, drawn into a ritual vision, and shown a future where the Emperor is worshipped as a god, while the Primarchs are forgotten or damned. The vision is manipulative, but the cruel part is that pieces of it resemble the future that will actually happen. So Horus falls because he is poisoned, deceived, flattered, and enraged all at once. My read is that he does not simply wake up evil. He convinces himself that rebellion is justice, and chaos is very good at helping pride sound like clarity.
Once Horus turns, he cannot just announce a rebellion and hope everyone follows. He has to separate the legions that will obey him from the warriors who will stay loyal to Terra. That is why Isstvan III matters.
Horus and several traitor commanders send their own loyalist space marines down to a doomed war zone, then try to erase them from orbit. This is the point where the heresy stops being an argument and becomes murder. Brother kills brother. Legion kills its own conscience,
and the rebellion is baptized in betrayal before it ever reaches the wider galaxy.
The Loyalists who survive Isstvan III become witnesses. They prove that Horus has not merely disagreed with the Emperor, he has crossed into a war where mercy will be treated as weakness. Then comes Isstvan V, the Dropsite Massacre, and this is the event that breaks the Loyalist war effort open. Several loyal legions arrive expecting to punish the traitors, only for hidden traitor legions to reveal themselves and crush them in a planned ambush. The Iron Hands, Salamanders, and Raven Guard are devastated. Their Primarchs are wounded, scattered, or worse, and the Loyalists lose the chance to end the war quickly. If you want the heresy in one image, picture a rescue force landing in fire, realizing the reinforcements behind them are actually executioners, and understanding too late that the galaxy has changed sides under their feet.
After Isstvan, the war stops being one front and becomes a galaxy-wide catastrophe. Horus cannot simply fly to Terra unopposed because Loyalist worlds, fleets, and legions still stand between him and the throne. So the traitors wage a war of delay, terror, and disruption.
They burn paths through the Imperium, isolate Loyalist forces, and turn old grudges into strategic weapons. The Word-bearers help turn rebellion into religious war. The World Eaters become a storm of butcher's rage. The Death Guard march into damnation. The Emperor's children chase perfection into horror, and the Thousand Sons are dragged deeper into sorcery and ruin. On the Loyalist side, nobody has the luxury of understanding the whole board. Guilliman tries to preserve an empire in Ultramar. The Blood Angels endure nightmares and impossible journeys. The Dark Angels fight their own shadowed wars, and the Space Wolves are used as executioners in conflicts they do not fully control. Prospero is one of the great tragedies, because it is not just a battle, it is a failure of communication weaponized by chaos. Magnus the Red breaks the Emperor's wards while trying to warn him, and the punishment that follows pushes the Thousand Sons toward the very damnation everyone feared. Calth is another anchor point. The Ward-bearers attack the Ultramarines in a betrayal so methodical that it turns a model Imperial system into a graveyard, and traps Guilliman far from Terra when Terra needs him most. This is why the heresy feels so huge. It is not one clean march toward the palace. It is a civil war where every faction is trying to stop everyone else from arriving at the decisive moment. The Emperor's secret project is the Webway Project, and it matters because it explains why he left the Crusade. He's trying to create a human-controlled route through the ancient Webway, so humanity can travel and communicate without depending so dangerously on the warp. In plain English, he is trying to build an exit from the one ocean where chaos is strongest. If it works, humanity may become far harder for the ruinous powers to manipulate. The tragedy is that the project requires secrecy, psychic power, and perfect timing. When Magnus breaks through the wards to warn the Emperor, he damages the very system the Emperor was building, and demonic forces flood toward the human webway. This traps the Emperor on Terra before Horus even reaches him. Instead of leading the Loyalists in person, he must hold a psychic breach shut while his empire tears itself apart. That is the bitter shape of the heresy. The Emperor's plan may have been humanity's best chance, but his methods helped create the conditions for its failure. The strongest interpretation is not that the Emperor was stupid. It is that he treated trust like a security risk, then discovered that secrecy has a cost. Even a godlike conqueror cannot always pay. By the time Horus drives toward Terra, both sides are exhausted and transformed. The traitors have power, momentum, and the favor of things that should not exist, but they are also being consumed by the forces they invited in. The Loyalists are battered, divided, and late, but they still have champions who can turn delay into survival. Rogel Dorn fortifies Terra. Sanguinius becomes a symbol of impossible hope. Jagatai Khan fights the war of movement, and countless ordinary soldiers stand in places where demigods have failed. The Siege of Terra is the heresy compressed into one final nightmare. Palace walls become battlefields, titans walk through fire, void shields fail, demons pour into reality, and the traitor host throws everything at the throne world. This is also where Horus stops being merely a rebel commander and becomes a vessel for chaos. Whatever noble rebellion he once claimed to lead has rotted into the same old bargain: power in exchange for your soul, then your name, then everything you thought you wanted. Sanguinius dies aboard the Vengeful Spirit after facing Horus. The Emperor confronts Horus, destroys him, and is himself wounded so terribly that he can no longer live in any normal sense. The Loyalists win the battle only in the narrowest possible way. Horus is dead, Terra stands, and the traitor legions flee into the Eye of Terror. But the Emperor is placed upon the Golden Throne. The dream of the Great Crusade is gone, and the Imperium begins its long descent into religious authoritarian survival. The future Horus was shown comes true, but only because the rebellion helped make it true.
The Horus Heresy matters because Warhammer 40,000 is not just a dark setting, it is an aftermath. The Imperium worships the Emperor as a god, partly because he can no longer tell them not to.
The Space Marine chapters are divided partly because nobody wants another legion large enough to tear the galaxy apart. The Inquisition, the Ecclesiarchy, the paranoia, the hatred of mutation, the fear of psychers, and the obsession with purity all grow in the soil left by the heresy. 10,000 years later, the Imperium is still fighting the trauma of a war it survived by becoming worse. That is the clean answer to why fans keep returning to this event. The heresy is not background trivia. It is the wound underneath the entire setting. It also works because almost everyone has a point, and almost everyone is wrong. Horus is right that the Emperor lies, but wrong that chaos is liberation. The Loyalists are right that Horus must be stopped, but their victory preserves an empire already sliding toward tyranny. The Emperor may be right about the danger of chaos, but his refusal to trust others helps chaos turn his own sons into weapons. That is why the story is bigger than a fight between good guys and bad guys. It is a tragedy about power without honesty, faith without wisdom, and family without forgiveness. So, if the Horus Heresy ever starts feeling like a wall of names, return to the spine. The Emperor builds the Imperium to save humanity, but builds it through conquest and secrecy. He gives Horus command of the Crusade without giving him the truth. Chaos turns Horus's pride, fear, and resentment into rebellion. The traitors purge their own loyal sons at Isstvan III, ambush the Loyalists at Isstvan V, and drag the galaxy into civil war. The Loyalists spend years trying to survive long enough for Terra to matter. The Emperor's secret Webway dream collapses. The Siege of Terra becomes the final test. Horus dies, Sanguinius dies, and the Emperor is chained to the Golden Throne. The Imperium survives, but the future becomes a tomb with engines. That is the Horus Heresy without losing your mind. It is the story of humanity almost escaping the darkness, then carrying that darkness forward as its new religion, its new politics, and its new normal. Thank you for joining Lore Heretic in the archives tonight. If this little expedition into grimdark lore earned its candlelight, subscribe, pull up a chair, and I will see you in the next one.